All right. We are live for another edition of Live from Redhook here at the Funktion House. And tonight we have a really special edition of the Funktion House in our Live from Redhook series. Tonight is a special Palladium edition.
That's right.
And we have 4 very special guests that were all part of the legendary Palladium. So if we put the camera on our guests tonight, starting off on our left right here, we have Reda. He was a head promoter at Palladium, right?
I was.
Through some legendary parties there on Saturday nights and the holiday weekends. And then we have Stephen Lewis. He was nightlife and managing director at Palladium, correct?
Yes.
And we'll also get into some other things that you've done. And then we have Charley Casanova. He was the guy who manned the turntables on Saturday nights.
Yes, sir.
He used to spin the whole night, play everything, back when a DJ played the whole night at a club. So,
Except
and
for the last hour.
You were open to close, really? Like 10 to 4?
Well, last hour we bring a hip-hop guy in. Actually, Chris, we brought a hip-hop guy in for the last hour just to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, that was like at the end, I think.
Yeah, that was more towards the end, yeah.
And then we can't forget the legendary MC of the Saturday night party. Yeah. Romeo's here.
What's happening, man? Thanks for having me.
So why don't we put our hands together for everybody here tonight? All right, so let's start things off. I mean, I guess first let's start off.
Let's start with Charley, since he's the DJ and this is a DJ show. You know, Charley, why don't you...
Well, first of all, I want to thank these guys for coming. You know, Steve Lewis and Reda. This is like nightclub royalty, in the 90s. He's top of the heap. And Romeo, he made my stay in the city much last longer,
Yep.
So how did you get started DJing?
Started DJing. I was in a rock band, and I was a drummer. Then I started working for a radio station, WBLS, which was the #1 station at the time.
Yep.
And just doing mixtapes. And then I got into the club thing. Matty Silva, my manager at the time, introduced me to Steve. He was doing Limelight Thursday nights. And I would fill in for Jelly Bean Benitez. And Steve wanted the new thing, which was techno. They were playing like Model House. They were doing like model nights. And then from there, that was my venture into the city for the first time through Steve. And then went to the building. Steve went to the Palladium. And that's it. The rest is history.
So Steve brought you over to the Palladium.
Yes.
Wow, that was nice of Steve.
You're a great guy.
Steve had the biggest nightclub reopening in history. If you want to tell that story, Steve.
Yeah, Steve. So you how did that happen? How did you get Palladium in your hands?
I had to Palladium like 4 times, maybe 5. I don't really remember the nature of the day, the night. Anyways, I was given it one more time, and I promoted it with the Sun, right? It was an invite. It was the Sun. And we had Debbie Harry perform from Blondie and Cold Cut and a couple other things. And we had so many people that 14th Street was blocked physically. You couldn't actually have a car on it. And the a captain showed up and a police commission, the fire commission or something, and they closed the gate with like 10,000 people inside and said, "Who is responsible for this?" I never wanted to shirk. I raised my hand, and the captain said, between here and Union Square, there's 14,000 people. Kid, whatever they're paying you, it ain't enough.
Wow.
And what year was this?
Oh, I have no idea about years. I don't even know what year it is
Had to
now.
be 91.
No, I think it was
I don't know,
definitely
it was later
before
than
that.
So
it had to be
Before that,
between
between
87 and 90.
87, I was doing the World, so it was after that.
It was about 89, 90, because I was there for 5 years.
The last
One
time?
of the time. The
Yeah.
last time.
The last time I was 91.
90,
91 maybe.
So just to backtrack a little with Palladium. So Palladium was a club that was reopened by Steve Rebel and Ian Schrager, right? After
That's
they had
correct.
gotten out of jail, they did that project and they opened up that club. But they didn't have as much success as they thought they were going to have, like they had with Studio 54, right?
That's
so then
correct. Rudolph was the director.
Okay.
And after it failed miserably the first week or two, they brought me in, and I did a party, did about 8,000 people, and they hired me as like to bring people.
Yep.
So basically, we packed out 5 nights a week, and they were making a lot of money. And then they left, and it changed hands to a bunch of people, and I took it over with Alan Cohn and Pete Frankel, and then Gation bought it from them.
So what year did Gation buy? Like 90?
I'm not really good with years. Honestly, I just don't remember. These guys are probably better.
I got to say
I was really
94.
busy.
No, Peter bought it in like 91, because you opened it, and then I think in the middle of you opening it again for the last time, Peter came into it.
Yeah, I brought Peter in.
Yeah.
What happened was
Yeah.
there was a lot of corruption going on.
Corruption.
Yes.
In nightlife? There's never corruption in
There
nightlife.
there were things going on, and I felt that it was better to bring Peter in, because at least I knew him, and I knew what it was like, and I had a good thing. I was really packing it out, but we were losing money, or they said we were losing money, because people were stealing money left and right, and people were sneaking in, security guards were making, it was great.
Right.
It was complete chaos, which I
Well,
really
Steve,
liked.
I heard the printer was making up extra invites and selling them on the corner.
There was lots of things going on, but
stuff
there
like that,
are a lot of doors in a place that's 108,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And so people were, people had control over different doors. And I knew that because I have like a photographic memory for faces, not dates. And I knew who I wasn't letting in, and when I saw them inside, I knew there was a leak.
Right.
So we fixed those leaks.
What I thought was amazing about the Palladium was that everything was like state of the art and so far ahead of its time in that nightclub.
Yeah,
So
they
it
had the
seemed-
Verilight in there, which was the most sophisticated light at the time, and it really made a difference. And there's giant TVs, and
Yeah, the TV
walls are
walls.
lit up.
And it was
really
a Richard,
amazing.
Richard,
Long sound system was
which he did
amazing.
Paradise
Like
Garage.
just everything about the club was just unbelievable.
What people don't remember really was that Larry Levan was one of the original DJs there, and it was a lot of great DJs. This is before the Charley Casanova era.
Yep.
But by the time we got to Charley, it was because we saw the numbers, the dollars were in the masses, and they were not in the bougie crowd, which
Yep.
we had other clubs for that, and we ended up having a four nightclub empire. And it lasted pretty long, and it lasted until it didn't.
And this was before social media, getting 8,000 people to a club before
Right.
like any technology.
Well, we had 170,000 names on our mailing list, and they were divided up into zip codes and what parties they attended. And what I would do as the director of the club is I would make a salad. Oh, we'll have 200 of these, we'll invite 400 of those and 600 of these, and then we tell the doorman what we wanted. And if more of these showed up, sorry, Chris, put you out. If more of these showed up, then the doorman would squeeze it a little bit until we got what we wanted. And I would hang out at the door and make sure we got what we wanted. And we got what we wanted pretty much every night. So, sounds like my second marriage, right?
I got a question for Chris and Steve. Do you feel that promoting is easier now with social media or Facebook, or does it dilute it because there's so many parties going on? Like back then, you would print the flyer, get into people's hands, and it was much more effective. I think now with Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, there's like so many parties going on. People get lazy, and that's their vessel to promotion. Do you feel it's easier now, or was easier back then?
I'd love to hear what you're going to say.
Well, right now, the people sitting here, we have 200 years between us. So, I mean, it's a young person's sport. When we were younger, we did what was necessary at that time. I am sure that if I decided to promote a nightclub today, I mean, I would pack it out 5 days a week with a great crowd. But I don't want to do it now because I'm old and I want to be in bed at 11:30 and sound asleep by 11:31. I don't want to do it. I did it. I did everything I could. I mean, they fucking put me in jail, which proof that I was doing it right.
Right.
Because if they don't lock you up for something, then you're not doing it right. That's the truth. And nobody's getting locked up these days because there's nothing like that going on now. A little bit in Brooklyn, but not really anymore.
Yeah.
Brooklyn is so sanitized that it's great. And I go to House Yes and I smile, but I don't really see anything that compares to what we did.
No, it
People
was
died
different.
in our era. Nobody's dying right now.
Yep.
When was the last time
Very-
somebody died in a club?
Well, you got Brooklyn.
I guess that's a good thing.
It's just very different to you.
I mean, I wish people were dying.
We made it through the
It does
day.
say something,
Not
though.
died.
It does say something, that you have people you're worried about people dying.
Well, I think now, like at some of these bigger techno events that they do throughout Brooklyn,
There's people
they
going
have
down.
but they have like staffs of paramedics there.
We had that.
You know,
Yeah.
They had
It's
that
like-
posture.
We
That
had-
ambulance
yeah,
is standing
It is
by.
very,
a
very
posture.
different.
It's very different.
I mean,
Yeah.
you don't. How many clubs do you have that fit 6,000 people? One in all of New York now.
In
Yeah.
Brooklyn. It's in the
It's
Brooklyn
in
Mirage.
Brooklyn.
Is it a real?
It's more of an
club or
event
is it
space,
It's
venue?
not a
yeah.
club. It's more of an event space.
It's in a venue.
So
Yeah.
there's really no space that fits 8,000 people that you could do, or 6,000 people, or five.
Absolutely.
Not even three.
The concept of a club is very different.
Yeah.
Back then, it didn't matter who was DJing. No offense, Charlie. It didn't matter because, well, I always going to have a good DJ because that was expected. But you went there to meet your friends, and your friends were there every night. And some nights skewed a different way, but you knew everybody there, or you knew 80% of the people there, and that was the bottom line. We had Kenny and different doormen, and they'd pick and choose, and we let in 20% of people we didn't know, and then we'd go in and look at them, make sure they're getting along with everybody, and if not, toss them. And we went forward every night.
Yep.
We made a lot of money.
It was like our version of social media back then.
Right.
Like you went into the club and you didn't have a phone. If you lost your friends, you lost them.
No, and
You lost them
everybody.
for the
Yeah,
whole
now
night.
you go to a club, everybody's on
You're
their
like,
phone.
No, I
meet
mean-
me by the steps
At 4,
downstairs
or
at
else we're
4
leaving.
so we can go home.
Yeah.
Everybody
We
was in the moment. Now
No,
everybody's like capturing the moment, but
Yeah,
everybody was
how-
experiencing it differently.
How I think it is in the past is alluding to what Steven said. So at the end of the day, it wasn't a matter of you had a lot of money that you'd walk to the front door and buy a bottle and they'd get you in. So Steven was looking for a vibe and Chris was looking for a vibe. So ultimately that's what determined who was in the club.
Yes.
So there wasn't a guy that just has a lot of money, maybe, he's a merchandise salesman and he's making a lot of dough and he buys some bottles and then everyone's just standing around taking selfies of that bottle at the table. It would be, I remember when I first started working in the club, I had to be like, Steve, I work here now, you maybe you can let me in now? And he was like, are you sure? Steve, I'm not lying. I work here now. But, ultimately what his job to do was to get the best vibe and the best mix of people. So, he was incredible at that. And that's something that Chris, followed off with. But
Yep.
it's a big difference of how it is nowadays, you know what I mean?
Steve went to USA. The kid that tried to get into USA, he said, we built a club for you downtown. Go there, Palladium, Limelight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, when I first went to Palladium, I was like 14, 15
Well, we
years
had
old.
actually
I was
a
14.
card made that was called Taxi Fare, F-I-R. And if you couldn't get into the tunnel, which at that point was the hottest club, what we do is we give you the card, and it said you take that to the Limelight, which was not the best club at that time, and they will pay for the cab ride over there. It's 5 minutes. And they would go, what? You just give this to the doorman, give them your taxi receipt, and they'll round it up to the nearest $10, and they'll let you in for $15 a piece. And they thought we were out of our minds. And one weekend, I think we did, 400 people that way. And these were 400 people that we were turning away from the tunnel. And basically, I was doing the door of Limelight from 27th and the river. So it was a science.
Yeah, and you were
Wow.
circulating them to other venues that you guys controlled.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's funny. I was one of those guys that got sent from Limelight to Palladium. They're like, you don't belong here.
Recognize you, yes.
Go to the
You
Palladium.
got the card in your wallet. I know you still got it.
Well, there was some shenanigans going on with me because these kids, they would call me up and I would have meet me at the back door.
That was me.
I would have 20 guys carry my records up.
That was me. I was young, man.
Oh, we didn't know about that.
Yeah, and I had a 30-person guest list.
That's not biased.
He was he was charging people to come into the back door.
because I knew you kids didn't have money at the time. I would go to Fun House back in the day, and
Good place.
the Palladium yielded a lot of DJs and producers, that night.
Yep.
Because there's so many Scissorhands, Rob Jr., so many KO, so many Riz. So many DJs that are still around, still relevant.
So, Chris, how did you get into the Palladium? Because you were head promoter at a very young age, promoting
I was-
Saturday night, doing a Saturday night party
I'll
there.
tell you, the first time I went to Palladium, it was 1989. And I walked in, and a group was playing. I don't even remember the name of the group. It was like every week they had that Friday night party where they had all freestyle and all this music. And I went there, and I was like, wow, this place is amazing. And then years later, I was throwing parties in Brooklyn, and I went to Palladium. I was like 18 or 17, and Steve just started the party there. And I came in. Kenny let me in. I walked in. I was like, I love this place. And I was talking to somebody, and they're like, oh, you should meet my friend Soren. And Soren works here. Soren Abraham and John Horn. And, you know, if you know a lot of people, you could put a guest list in. And, you know, I was like, please, let me get a guest list. And I did it, and I was doing like 100, 150 people, 200 people every week. And one day, this woman was like, who is this kid? How is he doing 300 people? He must be standing outside, handing out his card or telling people. And I was like, what? I was like, that's a great idea, though. But no, I'm not doing that. And then I just kept going and going. And then Steve was moving, right, at that time to the tunnel.
No, the
or
USA.
Something.
To Club
he was
USA.
using USA or the tunnel. I don't remember.
He moved a lot.
And Alessandra and Monica both turned around to me and said, do you want to try this Saturday? You know, you're doing 200 to 300 people. And I remember talking to Steve at the time, and Steve was like, you sure, kid? I was like, I think I could do it. And I just put together one Saturday night in July, I remember, and we did like 4,000 people. And that was the start of it. And we were there from 93 to 98, till right before when Junior took it for that last year.
Yep.
We closed.
How did you do 4,000 people on your first night? Did you put like a crew of promoters together?
Put like no, you know, honestly, when you think about it now, it wasn't like, it was like 10 different promoters from different places, but it's not like they put 10 different promoters today, like in one room. It was like 10 different promoters from different places with flyers, and, you know, we sent out a mailing list of like 10,000 names, like, and it just hit. It was like a void at that time for that age demographic that we had, and it worked. You know, and Charlie was great, and we put Riz upstairs in the Michael Todd room, and Romeo was great, and we just had, at that time, a great team. Like, we had really good people, and it reached all 5 boroughs.
Yep.
So at that time, it was, you know, it was not, when I think about it now, I'm like, you know, you have a club and there's like 500 people and you can't get it crowded. You know, back then it was like we had to do 3,000 and 4,000 people just to make that place look good.
Yeah.
You know, if you dipped under like 2,000 people, they were like, Chris, something's wrong. You did 2,000 people. Like,
You cry.
yeah.
Yeah, but there wasn't a ton of places to go to at that time.
There was a lot of places.
Yeah?
It was
There
different
was
kind
so
of.
many.
There were big places, but back then a flyer meant something.
No.
If somebody handed you a flyer, you'd go, "Thank you," and you'd read it, and you'd go, "Oh my God, I'm invited," and you took it seriously. And we were producing, 60,000 flyers, and we were distributing them to various crowds. But our favorite way of promoting to really get an event out is we had a thing called the Big Mouths list, which was a mailing list with 180 people on it. And you would mail out to these 180 people and tell them, don't tell anybody about this of Hardy. We don't want anybody to know
And they
about
told
it. And
everyone.
you would do 2,000 people of that list because they had the biggest mouths in town.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Who the fuck was Barrett Jones?
Oh,
Oh.
That guy you used to see his card everywhere.
He
He
died.
was-
He died. He
he
died.
passed away, yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
he passed away. But Baird was an interesting guy. He graduated
say the
some
least.
school from
Yeah.
somewhere. He was the curator of the Patterson Art Museum, and there is no such thing. He was a strange guy. But Baird threw parties from like 10 to 11 with an open wine bar. You had to let
Yes.
his people in.
And he had his picture on the
And his
card.
picture on the
Card, yeah,
card.
I
I
remember
sent him to my
seeing-
house.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he gave out about 1 billion of them. And I would use him on the chicest nights. I would let him seed the room because nobody comes early. So if you have a really chic crowd,
Yep.
Baird's crowd would come between 10 and 11 because you wouldn't let them in after 11, and they'd stay until 12. And some of the better ones stay late, and you don't mind.
And he had a good little thing. He had that card. You didn't call him. You didn't do anything. You just had
showed
that
it.
card, and when you heard he had a party, you just showed it. And like,
But he did hand them out inside the club.
Oh, he handed them out everywhere.
Caught him.
Oh, I
Oh,
caught him.
yeah.
I caught him a lot. You know.
I mean,
Steve,
that was his thing.
My favorite bad story is he took a leak in a women's room at a club, and in a men's room in a club, and there was a woman bathroom attendant, and he sued the club claiming it made him, he couldn't pee or have an erection anymore because that female ruined him, and he was famously non-sexual. So it was a pretty great lawsuit, I thought.
That's funny. So, Romeo, how did you get into the mix with Palladium?
Charlie and I, obviously, we met, I guess, in the late 80s, obviously, a long time ago. And that's when a lot of Latin freestyle was going on. So we did a record on Invasion Records, my first record. And then Charlie did a record, and we started doing records together.
Let's Work. We went to Europe, I believe.
We went to Europe, and he put out a record, Let's Work. It was a big remix. So we started doing records there in Europe. Came back. Charlie started doing, I guess, the Thursdays at Limelight.
Yeah, with Steve Romeo.
We started doing the Thursdays at Limelight. And it wasn't really, an MC situation. I just wanted to hype the crowd up.
It was kind of a new thing, techno music with an MC over it. I mean, then Prodigy came along, but it was really a new thing. So, and he just slicked bananas with the long hair and the chest protector.
So just grabbing a mic, hyping the crowd up. And, it was received well. We started getting people hyped. I was getting hyped, So we did that, and then obviously Charlie moved over to the Palladium, man, and it was a much bigger venue. And it was really crazy because we did, we started doing the Palladium, but I actually danced on Club MTV, and they used to film it there like years before, right? So like I knew all these little Michael Todd rooms, and I knew all these little staircases. So once we got here, I was like, bro, I know everything. I know how to get out of here. I know how to back staircase, sneak people up the long staircase to Michael Todd. But, we started doing that, and obviously, man, I mean, the energy of Palladium, was just out of control, man. I mean, the lights, sound system, everything was working. I mean, it was not a lot of, no beefs, really, people not really beefing, just people dancing. And I used to look down and look like an ocean of people, man. It was unbelievable. So, we started doing that, and obviously, Chris and I, we traveled to Mexico. We used to take it everywhere, man. But, it was great times, and, I'll always remember that, man.
I remember the first time I met Romeo. I met him on the stage at Limelight, and he was doing a performance. You were in, what was that thing called? It was with Victor Calderon. It was
Program 2.
Program, Program 2 or Program?
Yeah. No, it was Program 2.
And you were on the stage like beating up a radio with a bat.
No, they're crazy, man. It's funny because like I used to come out with like this chest protector,
Yeah.
right? Like a chest protector, goggles, go crazy, Indian outfits. It was like, it was much more theatrical, and
And all I said was,
you want to put a
who
lot
is
into
this
it.
guy? And Charlie's like, oh, that's my friend Romeo. He's a very nice guy. He's beating up a radio on stage with a baseball bat.
One thing everybody should know is that the Palladium and Limelight during this day was relatively peaceful.
Yeah.
I mean, we had kind of rough kids who in their own neighborhoods might beat the shit out of each other. But there was a certain amount of respect inside because you knew that if you fucked up, that was it. It was forever. So you never disrespected the house.
Yep.
And we went 6 months once without a fight. And we were like counting down days because we knew we were going to have one. And Aphrodito let some asshole in when I went in to take a leak. And that guy got into a fight with some Korean kids, and they stabbed him in the butt, and he deserved it. And that was it. But I was pissed. We broke our record. But that's where it was at. We didn't have the fights. Maybe later on, when I wasn't there, in your era, but I don't know. It wasn't that kind of place. It was a real
6 years
party.
we had a few fights.
A few.
Not many, though.
Well, see, I remember, like, when we were blowing up over Palladium, other promoters would send people in to slam dance. Do you remember that? And they would just start slam dancing in the whole dance floor. Then I would have to change the music up right away.
Yeah, but
so
that's
there was
not
a lot
fighting. Yes,
yeah, but still, it was rowdiness, you could call it. And,
What's crazy is that you're able to end the night with hip hop. You can't end the night now with hip hop.
Yeah.
Like back then, the last hour in the club was all hip hop, and everybody loved it, and everybody went home peaceful.
But
it was a relatively new thing in the clubs.
Yeah.
People wanted it, but they didn't. It was hard to do because you really, if you did hip hop, then you attracted a hip hop crowd. By doing it late, you really.
Yeah, hip hop was always like a side room thing, but bringing it on the main floor, Palladium.
It was a hot
Yeah.
room.
Well, I remember when you guys made that transition,
Yeah.
where you started bringing Riz down to like close out the night.
Yeah, at that time, it was 93, 94, 95. And by 94, at the end, we were like, all right, we got to change it up a little bit and add hip-hop into it because it was, I remember being in Mexico, remember?
In Mexico,
and they
I was
didn't
just gonna
have
say that.
one hip-hop record. And it was already 94.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know.
That was like when Biggie came around,
They
and
didn't
like
even
all
know
these artists were popping.
bought these records, and they were like, the DJs from down there were like, bring us more records.
Yeah,
and we
it
used to bring them the hip-hop
Absolutely.
records.
And it was
this
like
is 94. It's like crazy.
when we'd go to Mexico and you'd put hip hop on and reggae. That's when guys would make their moves with girls because that'd bring them close dancing instead of everybody just jumping around. So everybody like, yo, play some reggae and then was doing that. But Chris really brought that. When he went to Mexico, there was none of it. And, we started doing it, and KO was down there, and we were doing that. But, I thought it was like the transition to be down on the main floor with a lot of, house music and techno music. And then you go upstairs to the hip-hop room just like sort of for a break. And it was just like a total different vibe, like once you walk through that door, it would like change it up. Now you'd walk back to the main part and it'd be thumping, and then you go to hip-hop and it would be, so like you'd spend the night like walking back and forth. I mean, to me, it didn't matter if it was hip-hop, reggae, as long as I had a microphone, man, I was just, I was doing it. It really didn't matter.
The sound was changing. Techno was getting too commercial. I remember they called up me and Joey Beltram to do a techno show on Hot 97. That was a dance station at the time.
Yeah.
So they were promoting it without even asking me to do it. I was at Palladium one night. They said, "Oh, you're doing a techno show on Saturday night, you and Joey." I said, "Really?" So I said, "Okay, I'll play." So I played the hardest stuff. And the next week, it was Glenn Fisher was doing the techno show. Then the program just went over everybody's head. I mean, you had records coming out like James Brown is Dead. It just got too, it got too corny.
But then Palladium became like the hip hop center of the city because
Friday nights was a hip hop party, right?
Yeah, but then they started doing all the events and all the parties, and like Puffy had Puffy's house on Wednesdays that he would promote and do this Wednesday night party. And then I mean, going back now and thinking about it, like I met so many hip hop like Biggie and not. I mean,
well, you remember
and
the
LL
Sunday
Jay
that
would walk
tunnel,
in during
the tunnel.
the day, and
Chris,
John
you
Cena,
remember
everybody.
we flew in Wu-Tang?
Yeah.
And we put like the 30,000 in cash. Some
Money
guy
drop?
that we knew. We put like 30,000 on the TV, so they were laying this way. So Wu-Tang comes out going crazy. We fly him in. They were in Howard University or whatever, and then they dropped like 30 G's on the floor, man. And people were going crazy, man, going crazy.
I can imagine.
So that was like some of the crazy things.
Those are the moments that are created that people never forget.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you're never going to see that again. A club that big or that kind of energy. Steve, do you remember Lee Chappell?
Very well.
Okay.
Yeah.
One night, Lee Chappell, a gay gentleman, he brought a whole ice skating ring on the whole stage of the Palladium with ice skaters. It was amazing.
Yeah, man.
We did everything.
Lee Chappell is
We
amazing.
did a golf course in there. We did the circus in there. We did.
I heard. I didn't know
we
if it
did
was
wrestling
true.
in there. We did everything.
What was the craziest thing you guys did there?
I can't talk about that. I'm married.
Come on.
No, but I heard they had like $5,000 a weekend budget. Was that true? For Saturday night, you had like
$5,000? No, we had $65,000 a week budget.
wow.
Okay, and we spent every penny of it, and we had a good time. And then that did not include invites or mailing of those invites or distribution of them. That was just on the parties. So we would have a Raquel Welch party on one night, and then Rudolph Nureyev another night. We were always doing stuff. The Go-Go's would play, or there was always stuff going on. But this was the heyday. This is long before we went Charley Casanova. This was, Grace Jones. And,
Right.
But there were many incarnations of the Palladium, and these guys represent a time after when my era was really over. But I had been there before I ran it. Rudolph ran it, and and Rebel and Ian were they were amazing though. They were absolutely amazing humans. I mean, to work for at that time. By the time you got there, they weren't there.
No, they were not.
Steve and Ian were legends, and for good reason. I mean, I was hanging out with Calvin Klein, and I was hanging out with every name you could possibly imagine. It was a different world.
Yep.
Well, the time I got there, Steven was he passed
He
away.
had passed, yeah.
Yeah.
But I was there when Steve ran it, and he ran it.
Yep.
And he was a pretty amazing human being. I mean, the best story I can tell you about Steve was that he had his head in a plate of egg foo young at our Tuesday meeting and passed out. And the controller named Marvin Warbaugh was chastising me because I spent so much money on James Brown, and there was no return. And I said, but the people didn't leave when he got off at 12 o'clock. They stayed and drank for hours, and Rebel his head rose out of the egg foo young, which was dripping over his face, and he gave the numbers out, like every penny for coat check and everything like that, and he knew everything. And I was just like that. And
Wow.
He was an awesome human being. I mean, there was nobody in the business better than him. Some people aspire to it or claim it, but it's not the case. he knew everybody.
Yep.
And he would talk to Liz Taylor and Liza and Mick Jagger and all these people on a daily basis. And that hasn't been seen in nightclubs since.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, what I guess what we can relate to is like the Palladium was a club that was one of our first clubs that we were introduced to, right, in Manhattan.
Yes.
So from a nightlife perspective, what I think stands out the most from a few different things is that the nights was so well curated when we used to go there. So there was always different things happening. Like you had people flying from the ceiling, or you had different things going on upstairs that you can interact with, where they like strap you in that big fucking thing and it spun around, right? You can do that.
Art.
And they had like this white sheet that went over the dance floor. So you'd get there at like 11 o'clock and you wouldn't see anything. And then at 12:30 when Charlie would come on, that would open up. And then you just see the whole ceiling and
And
the
the glow
TVs would
sticks.
come
That was
down.
my favorite
right?
part of that room.
Yeah,
How
that
they
room-
made it smaller.
Yeah.
Yes.
How you cut out the whole upstairs
Yeah.
and half the room, and by the end of the night, you were like on the stage, up in the balcony.
In the bleachers.
Yeah.
Still have the house that came down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The house.
Yeah,
There was a
with
house, but
clothes
they
and-
had
That was
those-
on the
they had
MTV,
that
Yeah,
black
I mean the art.
triangle that came down.
I mean,
light would shine through
absolutely.
it.
You know, the
Yep.
thing with Palladium, and is obviously, I grew up in the Lower East Side, right? So I'd go to the Palladium to watch a movie as a young man. I mean, imagine sitting in a movie theater that big. It was a movie theater. And then later on, when I started listening to rock, I'd see rock bands there, like Rush and all of these, right? So it's different iterations. And then to actually work there and then see it. So you'd go down to the basement and there would be unbelievable like props, like art props, Keith Haring props, like stuff dripping down, dropping from the ceilings, TVs. I mean, it was when you went in there, it was like
Yep.
even if you were there every Saturday was different.
Yes.
You know, the way it was.
I mean, they had that
So,
Basquiat wall.
man,
Well, I wanted to bring that up.
it's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
First of all, the first Palladium did not have the Basquiat wall. The first one
did
did.
it?
Did it have Keith
yes,
Haring?
it did. The first Palladium had the Basquiat wall. It had the Francesco Clementi vaulted ceiling.
Yeah.
It had the Keith Haring giant poster,
Yes.
whatever,
On the
Yeah.
backstage, right?
backstage.
Yeah.
It had Kenny Scharf room down in the basement. But when we took it over the second time, we got rid of everything.
Not the Basquiat.
Not the
wall.
Basquiats. They stayed because we couldn't get them off. But we did everything else.
Well, painted on the wall.
Yeah, yes, but we did. We brought in David Spada to do the staircase thing. We brought in Stephen Sprouse to do a chain link Jesus over the dance floor. We changed the art we to fashion designers doing that. And as far as the Basquiats, they stayed in the room. But Koshin Sato, a Japanese fashion designer, looped fabric in the room. So it went from an art-based room club to a
Fashion-based.
fashion-based club. And that was done to relaunch it, and we were very successful. We couldn't have been more successful in the relaunch.
Yep.
I mean, we were doing 8,000, 9,000 people on a Saturday, and we made money. I mean, somebody made money.
Yeah.
So
I should have asked for more money.
yeah.
Me, right,
So-
Ross?
I didn't have a $65,000 budget.
So what is
Chris, just
65?
saying
in
about
case you
them
guys
right now.
were wondering.
They got like $3,200 and some drink
What a-
tickets.
what a-
man.
He worked with me during the day, Romeo, so he was there a lot.
So what a $65,000 budget that would be for the week of how many parties?
Well, it's not a matter of how many parties; it's how to fill the room. For instance, one day we used to have big parties, Big Apple Circus, whatever.
So wait, if your budget was $65,000 a week, what was the tickets clocking? What was the?
you had to fuck around. You know what I mean? One night, we took a piece of paper because we couldn't get a party. We had all these parties. And I folded an 8.5 by 11 party, and I had all these little boxes. And we booked a party in each box. So somebody's birthday for 100 people. And we ended up with 3,000 people just on the parties, just from a folded up piece of paper, 100 people here, 30 people there, 75, 200 people. And that's the idea. The money was spent on whatever it was. You had to cater it, you catered it. You spent it. You spent every penny of it. By the way, you didn't get it back. So if you didn't spend it, it just went to garbage.
So I guess the question is, if you're spending $65,000 a week, how much is the club making weekly?
Well,
Yes.
the coat check alone did that
Really?
In a weekend.
in
I
a
don't
week.
think I ever
In a week.
hung up
Oh, in a
coat
week.
Ever.
In
I used to go there with
Crazy.
You
no
ever see the
coat
size
on.
of that coat check?
Yeah, it was huge.
5,000
It
square
was,
feet.
it was a nightclub.
Coat check
It's
was
huge.
huge.
It was a nightclub.
And-
Bobby was
But
annoying.
remember, drinks weren't that cheap.
Right.
Drinks were
$12,
$10.
$14. They got up there.
I used to
And then we
photocopy
charged
the drink tickets.
75 to 77% in that range. Paid $20 to get in,
Yep.
Yeah.
which is lost on people today. That 75% of 5,000 people paid $25, $20 to get in. I mean, that's incredible. And then we had all the comps.
Even comps with $3.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
no, that's
yeah.
just later generation. But
$3
but comp
comps.
is always a comp. That was the one thing.
Who came up with that idea? You did?
That sounds like him. You know?
No.
Yeah.
They were complaining. They started complaining how many comps
Comps
we
we
were
were
doing.
giving out.
We were doing like 200.
Yeah.
And they were like, you got to charge something for these comps.
Yeah.
And we were like, all right, charge $3. And they were like, okay. So we charged $3.
$3
We still had comps, and then we had 200 of those $3 comps. I don't know why they were $3.
$3 is such a
I remember every Saturday calling Frank Mancuso
Why don't you let
at
us
like
buy
3
it?
o'clock.
We would give out so many. We used to do like 2,000 reduced tickets,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a ton, man.
and then 2,000 full pays.
I think I invented the reduced ticket.
It was a good idea.
I think I invented it. I mean, we just.
I remember I had a guest list there, and one night I got called into the office like after the party, and they were like, I went to go pick up my pay. It was on a Monday, and they were like, it says here you did 790 people, and I was like, oh, really? They were like, yeah. Where were you standing? Outside, and I was like, no, I wasn't. I was inside. They're like, you did 790 people on your guest list. That's like the highest that we've seen, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Thanks.
Where's my money?
That's hard to do, by the way.
We
It really
put a
is.
little envelope at the end
Because
of
the
night.
week starts,
Yeah.
you got to do 790, and then you have a week to do, whatever. It's like it's tomorrow.
Well, you came from a really deep neighborhood, right? So you had a big following from that neighborhood. I mean, that neighborhood went out strong.
Yeah,
You
it went
know?
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know how, honestly, I didn't know how strong because I was doing like little places in Brooklyn.
Yep.
And, when I went to the Palladium and I was able to do this, I was like, wow, this place is amazing.
Yeah.
And everyone was going out. And now I look back at it now and I'm like, we really like started a way different wave.
Yep.
Right? Because everybody was still going to like Staten Island and they were going to Brooklyn and they were staying local. And like we took people like at a younger age and took them out earlier.
Into
Yes.
a beautiful place in
Yeah.
Manhattan.
Beautiful place in
That's
Manhattan.
what it was
so
about.
it was like, how else would like where else were they gonna go?
Yep.
What I hate most about it now is that they use the logo. It's called the Palladium Dorms, NYU Palladium
Yeah,
Dorms.
that hurts.
And they used the logo, and that logo was sacred to us.
Yep.
And for them to, I didn't mind them ripping down the fucking building. They wouldn't let me put a nail in the wall at the time, but then they ripped the building down to the ground. It was landmarked, and how NYU gets away with it, I don't know.
What I heard was the reason why they were able to do that is because they raised the dance floor, that 6 inches or whatever it was, and then that changed the structural aspect of it. And
That's
allowed
a
it to do
Bay
it.
Ridge.
So like,
He's from Queens. He's from Queens.
Okay.
actually, I
No,
heard.
Bayside. He's in Bayside. I'm sorry. But
I
no,
heard that they messed
look,
with the dance floor. and
Look,
that
they
changed.
wouldn't let me put a nail in the wall. I redecorated it the second time, and they wouldn't let us do it. There were
Yeah.
certain places you could string things off,
You
but
couldn't
there was
touch it.
no. Everything was rigged. Everything we could light things. We could repaint it in the same color.
If you remember, even the grids
Right.
were off the walls. They weren't built in.
What about the paintings?
We could. The paintings,
Yeah.
the paintings were there. Oh, you mean the Basquiat?
Yeah, like the
Yeah,
Basquiat.
we added a Basquiat. And
Oh, no,
Norma
the Bas-
Kamali.
So you were
draped
able
the-
to paint on the walls?
No,
like
you weren't able to touch the Basquiats. But at the end of the day, they knocked down the Basquiat.
Well, some people say
no
that.
one knows.
somebody
took
got
it?
that.
How about this?
You saw it?
I know for a fact that they knocked it
Well,
down.
I don't know anything for a fact,
Because
but
my
there you go.
friend was the demo company that got hired to knock down Palladium. Such a small world. He was my best friend.
Did you get a piece of that?
No, I didn't take a piece of the Basquiat because it was already.
No, did you get a piece of the
demo.
commission off
Piece
the
of the
demo?
demo.
No, I wish. I did get one of those paintings in the what do you call it? In going up the steps. It was the old like fireplace mantles that two
Oh,
on
okay,
two
I know what you're talking
sides.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got one of those pictures.
What do they call that? The gallery or something?
Yeah, it was like going up the steps. It was
Yeah.
like one on one side, one on the other side. I got one of those, and it was from like 1890. It was from the original. What was it?
It was
before-
it was
no, before-
Academy of Music. And
Academy of
Academy
Music.
of Music.
That's what
I
it
got
was.
married there. I'm the
Wow.
only person who ever got married there. I did.
You got married at the Palladium?
I got married at the Palladium. I
The
married-
only, really, the only wedding at Palladium was
the,
yours?
the only one was mine.
Wow.
All 3 marriages, I believe.
Three
No,
of
they-
five.
That was Jennifer, right?
Jennifer. I married Jennifer at the Palladium, and Judge Elliot Wilkes, who was the Muhammad Ali judge, presided over it, and my wife was half German and half Palestinian, and I'm half Jewish and half Russian. So it was a really great wedding with Kuwaitis in the full garb.
Yep.
It was a lot of fun. We did over 5,000 people
At your wedding?
at the wedding. Yeah.
Did you have a $65,000 budget for that?
And
Yeah,
a $3 reduced
He
tickets.
gave it to me to take over the place. He gave me the wedding for free.
Wow.
He said, you only have to pay for the champagne. Rebel said that. And the first thing I did when I got married is I ordered a bottle of champagne, and everybody in the place ordered a bottle of champagne. And the bill was ridiculous. And when I went to pay for it, because he went, don't worry about it.
Wow, that
He
was
gave it
nice
to me
of
as a
him.
gift. So it was,
It's a nice thing, man. It's a
it was
story right
he
there.
was a really great guy.
no doubt.
You know, you'll hear a lot of things. Mike Myers was not Steve Rebell.
Yep.
That was a joke, and it was a shame. It was a shame because he was a really, really bright guy. And I spoke to Calvin Klein about that at one point. And I said, Calvin, how can you let that sit? And he goes, do something. He said, Calvin said to me, I've traveled all over the world, met kings and CEOs, and met everybody you could meet, and I've never met anybody smarter and more charismatic than Steve Rebell. And I said, why don't you say that? And he goes, because I have stockholders. And that's always a wrap.
Yep.
But the bottom line is, as all the people I've ever met, and he's met a lot of people, it's nature of the business. Rebell was the best of them all, by far, in a league of his own. And I'm not just saying it. I love Peter Gation. I love, all these guys, Maurice Brahms, all that. There's nobody. Not Ian is not like Steve.
Yep.
Steve he was the leader of the pack. And you want to talk about the Palladium, you talk about that is Steve Rebell and Ian Schrager's vision. To build that thing, you look at the pictures and you go, how could this possibly be built? Nothing like that is built today. Brooklyn Mirage, or whatever you call that, is not the Palladium.
Yeah, aesthetically, it's just a raw place. Yeah.
Yeah. My ex-partner designed it, Mark Design.
Yeah.
And it's great, but it isn't the Palladium.
No.
Which was iconic.
I'm more impressed with the outside of Brooklyn Mirage.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I just think that people are not, they don't really care about that anymore.
really?
Like aesthetics, like,
I don't know.
I think now it's different. I think they do again. I think for a while people didn't care about where they were going. It was all about who's going to be there that night, what DJ is going to be there. And I think now it's getting more to people going out and being like, I like going to that place because I like that place.
Yep.
And that place knows me.
well, I think
That's
it's
what I
more
like, I
about
think.
them being able to show people on social media that they're at that place. You know?
What I like
you
about
see a
the
lot of
Brooklyn
that.
clubs, they're getting back to good sound systems. Output, which closed.
And good music, too.
Good music, good DJs, but banging sound systems like we had back in the day.
Yep.
I feel the 90s, 2000, every club was opening. Steve, you were a designer, and zero money went to the sound system. Like back in the days.
Palladium and Richard Long. I mean,
I'm talking about after that.
Yeah.
I'm talking
It was,
about
yeah, you're right. There was a time period where they were really lacking on spending money on sound
It
systems.
was all
People were
about bottle
confused.
service, bottle service, bottle service.
When I opened my place, I put a good sound system in. I
We
put
tried.
Function 1.
There you go.
we tried, that's right. But when the Palladium was over and all that shit was over, you went into a different type of music.
Yeah.
And people didn't understand that you had to have a banging sound system. People say hip-hop, we don't need a great sound system for hip-hop. We can just put anything in there.
Yep.
And that's what happened. And yes, nowadays people spend money on the sound system, and sometimes that's all they spend money on.
Yeah.
But Damien
Yeah.
went out of business at Damien DeStasio at District 36, and that place was only a sound system. There was nothing spent. It was $10 spent on the walls. So people want nice. They dress up for nice.
Yes.
They spend money for nice.
So, Steve, you've been a part of a lot of stuff in New York nightlife. Would you say the Palladium is the most memorable moment for you?
No,
Running
Jeannie
that place?
Lavulo in 1988, the bathroom. No. There are no
I
such
thought it was
things.
just say when you got married to Jennifer.
That was very much right. No, there is no such thing as a memorable.
But
moment.
running that place wasn't
I
like
liked
your
running it.
time.
I liked it, but I also liked running Life. I thought Life was a really beautiful and fun club, much
Yes.
smaller, different vibe.
On
Everything I
Bleecker, on
did
Bleecker
was-
Street, right?
I liked Plaid. I thought
Yep.
Plaid was great, and
That
they'd
was a
still
great
be there if
space.
they,
All those spaces, like we taught, like Plaid and Plaid, they all had such good, like, Plaid was a million things. It was always
oh my
great.
God, it was beautiful.
Every time it opened, it was good. It was, what was it while it was in Palladium? I can't remember the
It
name
was
of it.
Key Club. No,
that was way after.
It was System, maybe. It was.
System, but before
Oh, System.
Brand?
Plaid was
It
System.
was Tilt.
It was a lot of things. It was never good, except
Yeah.
for the Cat Club. which
Spa.
was
It was
amazing.
Spa,
That
right?
was me. and-
First time I met Was was at Tilt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Life was also
I remember
Steve.
Tilt. You did a
Well,
Halloween
we-
party
every
there.
club that I did had its own vibe, and the vibe was for the moment. And you cannot say Palladium, because Palladium was an era. It was a moment, but it was a lot of moments.
Yeah.
A lot of moments. Like,
It was
I never was in the Palladium when he ran it because I was running something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I never had the opportunity to go there because I didn't go to another person's club.
I mean, for me being 14, like from trying to get in to being on the dance floor to him throwing out whistles and glow sticks at 2 o'clock in the morning, like that was an experience for me, you know.
I can't believe they didn't lock me up for that.
Yeah,
And
no.
it was also,
I used to get in.
I mean, I think that, you know, like the 14-year-olds today are a lot younger. 14, like everybody grew up a lot quicker back in the day. Like when you were 18 years old, you were like a young man. You were going out to work already. So at 14 years old, yeah, I'm sure if you look at pictures, we looked really young. But it was a different time. People grew up faster.
They get their music
online.
They get their dates
So
online.
like,
They get everything online.
I think
a
it's
different
just
time.
that, you know, people are staying younger longer, if that even makes sense. It's just like, I think today's day and age, like parents are sort of like babying their children longer, and they're not growing up as fast, because I have nieces and nephews that are 14 and 15 years old, and they're not even like thinking about nightlife at all, you know?
But a lot more change than that. People knew how, now, back then, they had to dress up to go to a nightclub. Nowadays, everybody's dressed up. The whole street, there's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people on the street who got great haircuts, clothes, because they're reading the magazines, it's online, everything. So right now, I couldn't pick out people to come into a nightclub. I couldn't do it because I would just let everybody, and they're all great.
Yep.
But back then, it wasn't the case. Back then, you either made it or you didn't. We would send people to get dressed. We had contacts at various clothing stores.
You'd see somebody walk up, you'd be like, he's from the Bronx.
Yeah.
That's right. And we would give them a card of a salesperson at Charvari and send them there. And the guy would call me up and say, your boy came in and spent 10 grand. And he'd come dressed to the nines, and we'd let him in.
Yep.
And
That's
that was the
great.
difference.
I
you know?
mean, you know, you'd have neighborhood guys, so I'd go out on my way to work every week. So guys would be like, oh, Rome, take me to the city, take me to the city. And they would show up. I'll be like, he's not going to let you in there. He's not gonna let you. Kenny be like, take that T-shirt and go back to where you came from. And my friends would be there. I'd be like, I told you, man, change your shirt. I mean, it's, you know, we laugh about it now, but what the reality is, you know, you were trying to do something. You were trying to get a positive vibe, and you wanted, you know, more than good-looking people, but you just wanted everybody to really care about it and come into the club and care about it. And that's really where it came from.
Yeah, it was tough to get in with sneakers on.
Oh, forget
Let me
it.
tell you,
man.
that brings me to your question. I do have an answer to your question. At the Palladium, I had let some kid in who showed up with one of his crews or somebody else's crews, and I had let this one kid who I didn't know in, good-looking kid, and I let him in. And it was 2 years later, and the kid was leaving dressed to the nines with a beautiful girl on his, and I walked out and I said, wow, that kid has come a long way. Look at that. And he walked by. A minute later, he came back and said, Steve, I never thanked you. You changed my life. You taught me how to dress. You taught me how to act. And I'm doing very well now, and I appreciate what you did for me. And that was my best moment. It wasn't the money or the thousands or whatever. I mean, you know, it was that moment, the moment when that kid thanked me for changing his life. And that's what we do. We change lives.
Yep.
We, all of us, him, me, all of us could do more other things to make money. You know, I design now. I design clubs, whatever. I can do anything. But I design because I don't want to run them anymore. And eventually he's going to walk away too. You got to reach a point. You got to say, yo, it's a young man's sport. I got to get the fuck out.
Everybody
hard.
has a shelf life.
Everybody has a shelf life. I'm 66 as I sit here. And I got scars and wounds and jail time. A couple of divorces. I fought the war, you know.
Yeah.
Now there's no wars, you know, but back then there were wars. Every day you woke up, you packed your gun, you know, I had clothes designed to hold my gun. You know, it was a rough world. And it's not like that now.
Yes.
I mean, I love Noah and Jason, and I love Richie Keefe and all that, but their lives are not at risk. And my life was at risk.
It's
So,
more exciting, right?
I loved it. I mean, I was not in it for the money.
He too likes to live deep.
so I go ahead.
So you tried a couple of reunions. You did.
I did one.
You did, was at
I
Manhattan
did
Center,
one
right?
at the Manhattan Center like 15 years ago, and it was great.
Yeah,
Like,
I
we had
was
a great
there.
Time.
Steve,
You actually
Chris,
played-
you still owe me for that. You never paid me.
Yeah, really? Thank God we
It's a
broke
big
even.
possibility.
You owe them $3.
Oh, what you doing?
I own $13.42 now. No, but it was a great.
Speaking of, we're having one in Staten Island in August 3rd.
Yep.
You know, a little get together. We're gonna play some Palladium classics. DJ Riz, Jessica, DJ Offbeat. So if whoever wants to come, hit me up. Romeo will be there. So.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to touch on one thing before we wrap up the interview. And I mean, obviously, this show was for you, Charlie, right? We have you on the show. So as a DJ, for people who went to the Palladium, I think you used to curate a great set of music. And there was a lot of things that Charlie did as a DJ that were very innovating. Like when the New York Rangers won the Stanley Cup, you sampled the whole thing. Ladies and gentlemen, the New York Rangers have won the Stanley Cup. And the whole dance floor went crazy. And you used to drop...
Steve used to like the Scarface clip I would play.
The Scarface. You used to do so many things like that which were unique as a DJ. And I think, like, people used to look forward, like... So we have a DJ here, Rob Jr. He used to open up for you, right? He used to play till 12 o'clock. He used to do a great job warming up the room. And then you would get on. You'd go underneath the mixer. You'd make it a little louder, right? There was a little knob underneath the mixer. And I remember that vividly. And the dance floor used to just erupt when you used to go on. And you knew how to play that room. So as a DJ, you did a great job.
These guys would pack the room. You got to keep them there. And you got to stay in the city. You got to do it, you know, be innovative. You know, do what everybody else is not doing. Movie
Charlie
clips.
was a ruthless DJ, ruthless.
What I remember
That's why we
about
liked
him-
him. He destroyed the room every time he played. He destroyed it. And as a guy who's
He
well, I
really
really
did.
didn't listen to the music because I had to watch a million things, but I would watch the room. I
Watch
never
the crowd, yeah.
and the crowd was going nuts on this
I mean,
guy.
between me and Steve, you had to be there like 8 years straight.
Yeah, it was like 6, 7 years.
All right.
And
Only 6, 7.
And Romeo
Not
just
8.
That's a lot.
You know,
adding Romeo to the mix. People just lost their minds. You know,
That's
just
right.
Me and we, you know.
You know, the thing about me and Charlie is prior to us, you know, going out to do a thing and play them, Charlie'd go through a million records. You know, we take something from the Doors, we take an old Iron Maiden piece, any little piece, and he'd have that ready, man, and we would play it. But you know what's really crazy about it is, like, if I find an old tape or something, I put it on, it's fucking slamming right now. Like, right now, put it on right now, and it's slamming. You don't notice a time period of it because, you know, so many different things mixed in. He was incorporating a lot of hip-hop, like Rob Bass stuff with a lot of house music and, like, all types of different mixes. I mean, I did a Latin hip-hop record. He was scratching, playing Public Enemy on, like, a Latin freestyle record.
Yep.
Like, people were like, you know, this is like 88, and we like doing a lot of.
Well,
you know,
I went through every genre of music. I started with hip hop, and then, you know, early R&B, and then freestyle.
He was using records.
Yeah.
He was using
Well,
records. He was using
Real
to real.
Yes.
Real to real.
But I also think Charlie had a great knack for picking out the records to remix or taking samples from records and, like, making these remixes that would just turn the dance floor upside down. You know, like at
What
the
was
time,
that
like
song?
that
What
dude.
was the song? They're like classical, like you put it on.
Apotheosis. Yeah, that
When
was.
you put that
record.
shit on, I was like, I had to run down. So you can put it on now, and you'd run down, and it would really. I thought the roof was.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was so much energy
That was our
from these
song.
people.
That was our peak.
You know,
peak
that
at
was the
night.
peak.
And I was doing the building with Michael Alec and Kiyoki. They were promoting, and Michael Alec said, "I don't want no house music, no house music." Jermanda, Gotta Love You, was the biggest record at the time, so I would play it. Kiyoki would run up, take that record off. He doesn't want no house music. I went home next Saturday
And you
on a
sampled
cassette.
that, yeah.
I made a techno mix of it
I remember that. Yeah.
with that sample,
Remember that,
right?
Chuck?
And then the guy Craig Coleman was at the Limelight one night, hanging out Thursday in the crowd. He goes, "What is that?" I said, "It's some remix of it." He goes, "I want to put that out." So he put it out.
Yep.
There you go.
I remember that. Well, listen, thank you everyone for coming down here to the Funktion House.
Thank you.
Thank you
And
for having
this is unbelievable history right here in nightlife and in a great club that we all got to experience. So we look forward to you, Charlie, taking us back.
I'm a little rusty.
It's all right.
I haven't DJed in a while.
You know, it's history, but it's also now. Charlie's going to go on now, but we're all still, in our own way, very, very relevant.
Yep.
And we had a great influence on what's going on now, and we're respected for it for the most part. You know,
Yep.
and you guys doing a good job. Charlie was always the nicest guy in the world, and that's why I'm sitting here in Redhook in your little studio here.
Little.
Because well, this is
Tremendous,
little to me,
this place.
you know? Hey, this ain't the Palladium.
It's like the lobby.
This is all right. No,
This was the bathroom. Right?
this is the coat check. half the coaching.
No, but I gotta say one thing. The person that, and I remember this to this day. He came home from jail that time, and we're at a rooftop party. I think at your girlfriend's house. You just had a party there, and he said, if you're gonna do anything, Chris, the thing you gotta make sure is that you always stay relevant. Always. I was like, all right. I took that advice.
Great
until
advice.
Yeah.
today still.
It's very relevant.
Yep.
Advice. You have to be. You can't be young forever. I'm old now, and I see the end. You know, I can't believe I'm still alive. But you still have to stay fresh. You still have to understand that it's a young man's sport.
That's right.
And we're too old. We
Yep.
are. But he's still doing it, killing it. But he's 45, so he's got another few years.
35.
Yeah. Well, in our hearts we are. You know, I'm still 20.
Yep.
You know,
Well, at least he still has most of his hair.
Chris looks all Hollywood. Chris went
This
Hollywood
looks
on
great,
us.
right?
He went Hollywood on us.
He's very cheeky. You know.
I try.
All
See him
right.
on TV all the
I want
time.
to thank everybody. Thank you guys for
Yeah,
having
thank
me.
you
Yeah,
guys.
of course.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
guys.
coming
We're
in.
going to take a
Really
2-minute break.
Charley
And we're going
Casanova.
to get Charley Casanova up on the set. He's going to rock live from Redhook.
I'm going to try, people. Want to thank
Thank
everybody
you.
for coming down.
I gotta buy the stool.
Oh.
You got.
Engine number 9 on the New York Transit line. If my train goes off the track, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. Back on the scene, crispy and clean. You can try, but then why? 'Cause you can't intervene. We be the outcast, down for the settle. Won't play rock, won't play the pebble. Open the door, you best believe we're sliding through it swiftly.
he's on 6. Just make sure, you know what, just put them all up just in case.
1, 2. Yeah, I'm proud to introduce DJ Casanova at the Funktion House Tuesday night. I'm your boy, MC Romeo. We'll take you back, way back, show you how we used to do. Give it to him, Char.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life.
Check it out. 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 Check it out.
Into time. What we're gonna do right here is go back, way back into time. What we're gonna do right here is go back.
One, two. Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, DJ Casanova, MC Romeo, you know how we do. Taking you back old school. Start doing some shit for you. Yo, Charlie, show them how we do. Old school, baby. Here we go, come on. One time. Yeah. Here we go, come on. Bring it on, come on. One time, come on. Yeah.
Here we go, come on. Yeah. Bringing your old school Palladium, baby. Every Tuesday night, Funktion House. One time, one time. Yeah. Bring it in, come on.
First day we met, my heart stood still. I never had a man like you, and I doubt I ever will. So tired of playing all these love games. But since you came into my life, I had a change.
Bring it on, come on.
That's why I'm so glad I found you. When I feel my whole world around you. Oh yeah, gonna be true, gonna be true. Got a love for you. Special, special. Got a love for you. Listen, baby. Got a love for you. Can you feel it? Got a love for you. I'm gonna be true.
One time, come on. Bring it up, come on. Like this. Like this. MC Rome, DJ Casanova at the Funktion House, baby. Break it down. Break it down. One time. One time. Here we go. Come on. Here we go. Come on. Yeah. Yeah. Yo, Charlie, let's take them old school. Let's take them old school. One time. Two times. At the Funktion House. Whoa. Yeah. Here we go. Bring it on. Here we go. Here we go. One time. for your motherfucking mind. Yeah. Bring it on, come on. Yeah. DJ Casanova, MC Romeo, taking it back old school, baby, at the Funktion House. Yeah.
What's my motherfucking name?
DJ Casanova.
house of love. $50 or more. The house of love. The house of love. The house of love. The house of love. $50 or more. The house of love.
speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. Look, up in the sky, it's a bird.
It's a plane.
DJ Casanova.
Casanova.
Give it up for Charley Casanova.
Yeah.
Thanks. Is this on?
It's on, yeah.
I want to thank everybody for coming down. I'm a little rusty, but I think I did all right.
Sounded great, man.
We need to get some more clubs like the Palladium back in New York.
Yeah, that would be great.
It's a shame.
We need some investors, to get some investors.
Me in the house.
Well, Charley, listen, first of all, we want to say thank you for coming down to the Funktion House. It's been a long time coming.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll
3
come back
years,
and we'll do my
waiting
whole.
3.5 years for him to come down to the Funktion House, but he finally made it.
So you got a big show coming up, right? The Palladium reunion at Eve.
Yeah, August 3rd. Giancarlo, he's in the house. It's a great club, good sound system.
Yep.
And come down. It's going to be a lot of fun.
We're going to try to get
So
there.
August 3rd, Charley Casanova will be live on the set at Eve Ultra Lounge in Staten Island for the Palladium reunion.
Yep.
And tonight was a very cool Palladium reunion at the Funktion House. I guess that's it.
Yep. Thanks for coming down, bro.
Peace out. Goodbye, America.
Thank you.
Peace.